Here. So early morning live stream for you. Couldn't sleep, so I thought I'd come out, hang out with you guys a little bit, and talk about why it's going to get harder going into the future to buy a home, explain the details of what it is that's going on, and I'm going to tell you now the truth hurts. So if you are sensitive to the fact that things are going to get very tough going into the future, especially when it comes to that of acquiring what we would believe to be the American dream, this is going to take place going into the future in a much more difficult fashion. I'm turning off the Wi-Fi here real quick. As most people are hoping and wishing and dreaming that their regular average day job is going to be enough to cut the mustard and get them a decent place to be, a family, the kids, the retirement, all the stuff that we would want for ourselves when we think about what it is that the American dream is, but yet we find it to get harder and harder every single day. And many times you will find that economists out there want to explain the situation, and they do a pretty good job of explaining the symptoms, but then thinking somehow of dealing with those symptoms, like trying to regulate, create laws, change the system, do something of that nature, will then bring in the appropriate sort of environment for us to then have our regular day jobs be enough. And I think this is a very naive approach of looking at the economy when you're trying to figure out what it is that you need to do. And again, the truth hurts, and I don't want to try and sugarcoat anything, but as things go on going into the future, if you do not take appropriate actions for yourself, you're going to find it very difficult to try and make ends meet. And of course, I don't want to be like the doomsdayer. What I am trying to share with you is the underlying economic forces that are playing out and why it is that they play out the way they do. I've shared with you many times the Cantillon essay and all these speeches on monetary policy, but I think about what it was that I was doing myself, because 8 years ago, this YouTube channel is 8 years old yesterday, right? It had its eighth birthday yesterday. And I think about the condition of life that I was in 8 years ago and how it was that I was acting, behaving, and feeling during those times. And when I think about the situation that I was facing and where I was in life and where I was headed, it was not good. I was broke, had not a lot of, things going on as far as like any kind of flow. Like I wasn't in a position in which that I could go and, try and hustle up money or anything like that. I had bills piled up to, I don't even know, $20,000 worth of bills, probably even a little bit more than that, medical, credit card, all the bills, all the kind of bills I had, drinking a lot, smoking tons of weed. And I looked at my life right then, and I think about some of the things that I was communicating about the way I was feeling about the economy, right? I hated everything about the politicians. I hated everything about the New World Order. I hated everything about bankers. I hated everything that was out there. And I would pinpoint all the problems that I would see out there. Like, that's the reason why we suffer. They're the ones who suck. If it wasn't for them acting the way they do, then we would have a much easier way of life. And I did that quite regularly. And I was really good at it. Like, I mean, I could really, like, spin a tale of, the reasonings why we all suffer the consequences of it. And then one day I'm looking out there and I'm thinking, not everybody is suffering, right? Like I was deep in debt. My family was, right there with me and trying to, sticking it out with me. I couldn't believe that. But, here it is. Like I'm looking out there and I'm thinking, there's people who are actually doing okay. And I'm not one of those people. Why? Like, why is it that I'm suffering, and I know all the reasons why, but yet all the reasons why I'm suffering, and I can pinpoint right down to it, those people over there aren't suffering the same thing. And I'm thinking, okay, well, wait a minute here. Now, if they're not able to suffer in the same fashion that I'm suffering, what is it that's going on in their life that the New World Order and the bankers and the politicians and all that other stuff don't seem to impact them the same way? eh? And I'm not talking about, like, some, Illuminati group out there. I'm just talking about people that I know, like personally, they're doing well. They have businesses. They seem to be running a life of abundance. They seem to be growing, whatever. But here it is. I'm very stagnant and I'm like in the hole and I'm not doing well. And I'm thinking to myself, dang, there's got to be a different way going on here, man. There's got to be something else that I could be doing that could be different, right? Because obviously, what it is that I'm doing isn't enough or isn't working. And so when I made that decision, I'm like, okay, I may not be one of the people who are killing it, but there are people out there who are killing it. How is it that I can conduct myself in a way that I can kill it too? Maybe not even just kill it. It would just be nice to be able to pay my bills. Like to me, paying my bills on time is killing it because there was a time I couldn't even do that. So when I think about like what it is that people want for their life, jet airplanes and fancy trips and all kinds of stuff, hey man, go for it. I don't know. Me, I just wanted to pay my bills on time and that was something I couldn't do. Like I had no extra money. So the first thing I decided that I needed to do in order to start getting myself on a path of appropriateness to get to where I feel that, I would actually have something in my life, maybe not be killing it like those people over there are, but maybe to a point that I could actually acquire something in my life, what would I need to do? And I thought to myself, well, probably the very first thing you should do is quit drinking. Do you think maybe that's it? Like, there's a lot of money that gets spent in that. It's a lot of wasted time. You're not necessarily chasing anything of excellence when you're drunk, right? I mean, you got the brakes completely on when you're drinking. So there's no way that you might be able to do it. There was no way I was going to be able to do it. Like, I could not do it drinking. So that was the first thing I had to give up. And it's not like, my life turned around instantaneously. Like, soon as I gave up the alcohol, some boom, right? Here we are, just awesomeness every single day because of it. It doesn't work like that. Like, you give up drinking, the next day is pretty bad because now you're starting to sober up and you're starting to realize, like, how pitiful of an existence you really are in. And that's not fun. That's the reason why most people continue to drink. They're like, oh man, I'm not handling this. Look right back into it. And that way they don't have to think about how horrible it all is. But, you know, if you're going to face the consequences of your actions, then you got to face the consequences of that, which is the exposure of the reality of the situation. And that is that you are screwed up. Right? So I made that decision. Okay, I'm going to quit drinking. Well, that was a long road, right? Here it is. It's like 10 something years down the road. I still think about drinking. 4 o'clock rolls around. I still wonder about, like, that feeling of, stopping at the bar or whatever, right? It fades, it goes away, but it's still there. It's always there. So, there's some demons back in there. I don't know. Some people might have it in gambling or something else. I don't know. Everybody has their issues. But a lot of times you're going to find that whatever issue that is, it holds you back. It limits you. It prevents you from advancing. It keeps you from expansion in the network that you want to grow, the businesses you want to start, the savings you want to do, everything that's going on in your life. It usually comes down to something like that, right? You got this sort of evil thing that you're not willing to admit to, embarrassed about, you know, whatever, right? I mean, you got to face that within yourself. Not everybody has it, but I know I did. So once I faced that and kind of came to the realization that it was going to be a tough road, but I was going to go down that, you start to realize a lot more about things going on. Like you don't focus in on parties or hanging out or anything like that. You start thinking about other stuff, which is, I think, the key to it, right? It takes a little while, but pretty soon, instead of thinking about like going and hanging out at the bar or, doing something of that nature, getting, drinking or whatever, you start thinking of like things that you could do, places that you could go. people that you can meet. There's all of a sudden there's this kind of shift in the way that you are acting and thinking and behaving just within it, just because you're no longer like clouded by this alcohol induced behavior that is then needing to be around other people who are also induced in that behavior. You're now looking at different groups and different ideas and different things, right? So this is probably one of the harder transitions that a lot of people have to go through, right? Once you like, especially if you've done it for a long time. I mean, I was 40 years old when I decided that I was going to finally give up drinking. By 40 years old, you're pretty well set in your ways, right? Unless you are like actively, consciously trying to change the way that you are thinking and behaving and feeling, it's pretty much locked in, right? So now here it is. You have to go down the road. Oh, I'm gonna check out the super chat here real quick. I lost a super chat the other day, and I don't want to do that again. So, all right. We're all in the same boat, bro. XBT786. Thank you so much for the $10. I really appreciate it. I do think that we're all in the same boat, but I don't think that necessarily. I think we're all in the same river, but I don't think we're necessarily all in the same boat. All right. Some people have a luxury, pleasure craft that they're up on. Other people are trying to run their, little skiff around. Other people are on such a magnificent freighter that it doesn't even seem like they're in the same even conditions. But, ultimately, we're all in the same river, operating our own vessel together, doing that. Right. So we're somewhat in the same environment, but we're not necessarily all in the same boat. And I know a lot of times we want to call it like that, when we say, hey, we're all in this together, this is our economy. But yet those people are killing it and we're not. And so obviously they have a better economy than we do, or this economy is working out better for them. And if it's this economy, then, why is it so good for them and so bad for us? And this is again where I think where we're headed down is that once you start going down this road of sobriety and then figuring out that your thoughts are really your actions or are going to create your reality, when you're in a alcohol induced reality, it's very clouded, very obscured, very complicated, very, aggressive and how I put it, like non-intelligent, I don't know, like, stupid. I don't know how you want to describe it. That's up to you. But that's ultimately what it is this alcohol induced and consciousness is now like got you in this low vibration with not a lot of ideas on what it is that you should be doing to advance yourself. You can look at all the things that keeps you from advancing, the politicians, the bankers, all the other stuff. Those things are very easy to focus in on when you're doing that. But what is very difficult to do is think about the businesses that you should start, the places that you could go to invest, the network that you can build. These things are very difficult to do when you're drunk because ultimately, when you're drunk, you can't do those things. Like some people could try to do them, and maybe some people might even be successful at doing it. I know I wasn't, and most of the people I know who drink don't do that really either. I mean, I'm not saying that people who drink don't invest. What I'm saying is people who are not investing, not pursuing businesses, not doing the network, not doing those sort of things, and drinking at the same time. That's probably one of the major impacts there that are preventing them from advancing is that part of it. All right. So anyway, once we set that part aside, we have to then start looking at the economy in a whole different fashion because there was a time when we could like just kind of follow our grandparents or even maybe our parents' footsteps and say, hey, we can go get a job, and with this job we are going to be able to provide ourselves with enough, right? And that I think is very, very confusing for a lot of people nowadays because it doesn't seem to work, right? And so they want to say, oh, well, it's the baby boomers' fault, or it's the politicians' fault, or bankers' fault, or whatever, who have created this situation in which that there is all this massive amounts of wealth that is now concentrated into, a particular group of society here, where everybody else is now suffering the consequences from it. And then they want to like, pinpoint all these issues that are now taking place. Like, I mean, it's just even the idea of luxury communism. I mean, I laughed at this statement. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy, right? Um, but there's a lot of reality to the accusation in which that, once you have acquired wealth, you're going to want to try and secure that wealth, do everything you can to prevent from losing it. And especially the older you are, the less chance you have of reaccumulating wealth again. So more likely you are going to do things to try and even hold on to it even harder the older you get. So it's no surprise when you find the rules and the regulations and everything else that has now taken place that everybody wants to pinpoint as the reasonings why we have such a concentration and then a securing of that concentration into the hands of a few. This is total symptoms of ever increasing amounts of new money that is poured into the system, and then it finds its way up to a handful of, just into the concentration of a handful of people. And this is going to happen every time. It doesn't matter whether or not you have rules or regulations or anything else going on with it. It's just the natural consequences of flow. When humans get money, they want to spend the money. Right? It's just the way it is. Why else would you get the money unless you wanted to spend it? It doesn't make sense to try and earn the money if you don't spend the money. And so when it comes to like human nature, anytime they ever acquire money, that's the first thing they're going to want to do is go and spend it, right? And then when they spend it, it leaves them. They don't have it anymore if they spend it. So unless you have ever increasing amounts of more money coming in, the moment that you spend it, it's gone. Where does it go? Well, it goes into the hands of the most industrious people out there who are then going to concentrate it, meaning that they are going to hold on to this and accumulate a good sum of it because they want to become property owners. Now, those are the two different groups of people. You have industrious people who are going to postpone expenditures, postpone their increase in standard of living, and they are going to save, put that money towards a secure rate of interest that is beyond that of their occupation. That right there, people get very, very mad at, both on the people who are doing it and people who are not doing it. People get very mad at that. So they say, hey, people who don't do this, it's their fault that they're poor. Like they're mad at the poor people for not doing it. And then poor people look at the people who did it and they're mad at them saying, we're mad at you for doing that. You've concentrated all the wealth for yourself. You didn't leave anything else for us. You're not generous with your accumulation. They get mad at this. People who are industrious, who postpone their expenditures and put that money, that extra money, towards a secure rate of interest beyond that of their occupation is a very maddening thing. It angers people. It's weird to think. It's like, I mean, to me, it makes sense. Well, yeah, work hard, save, put your money towards a return and, live a secure life. What's wrong with that? Right? All the people who didn't do it are freaking pissed that you did it. And all the people who did it are pissed that other people are mad at them for doing it. Saying, dude, why didn't you do it? You were choosing to do drugs and party and screw off while I was working hard, trying to save, trying to accumulate. You see the negative attitudes that people have towards this because it's a separation between the rich and the poor that has taken place. This inequality creates the negativity. It's going to happen every time. I mean, you can't stop it. And see, the problem is on the flip side of that, people will recognize that everything is getting more expensive and that they have to work harder for it. That's pretty obvious, right? Everything's getting more expensive and they have to work harder for it. Everything is getting harder by the day. Well, if everything is getting more expensive and you have to work harder for it, think about what it is that you're working harder for. Because most people only work as hard as they need to for their upkeep of their maintenance. Like they don't want to work any harder than it is to buy the apartment, the car, and all that other stuff, but they certainly want a condition, a style of economics, a change to the system, something in order for their behavior to all of a sudden be a profitable one. That's what people are asking for. When I look at some of these comments, they're like, you should be following this economist who has 1 million followers and he has all these, all these awesome books that he's written and all this other stuff. And he'll tell you that if we had a fundamental change to this system, we could have all kinds of really awesomeness that comes to the people. And I'm thinking that will never happen. Never in 1 million years is their hypothetical situation ever gonna manifest into reality. The reality is this, what we experience every single day. And if you are hoping and wishing and praying for a change out there, like I remember that. I remember that wishful, hopeful change that was supposed to come, right? Shortly after that, I decided that I was going to quit drinking and start going off on my own and give up on this new world order, right? Because that hope and change wasn't delivered. Inequality got worse. The problems that we face here with the ideas of being into a position of home ownership is getting harder by the day. And it was nothing that hope and change brought to the American people that brought any kind of difference. Right? There was no difference. I mean, if anybody sees any difference to more war, more debt, and more separation to the rich and the poor, I would love to see it because I didn't see any difference to that. None. Not any administration my entire life. So yeah, no, I'm not going to sit around and hope and wish and dream and pray. I got to figure out what it is I need to do. Let me go check out this other super chat here before it disappears. Sorry, guys. I felt so bad for T Flats the other day. Thank you so much, man. Thank you for considering that I missed out on yours the other day. I really appreciate you hitting me up again and supporting the uneducated economist. You guys are awesome. Exactly. Some people are in yachts in the river, not in the same boat. Yeah, and that's where I think that that we have to kind of understand it from that kind of logic too, is that we are in the same river, we're exposed to the same environments, the elements, the weather, the stuff is going on, right? The conditions are somewhat similar, right? But how we operate within those conditions are very different. Do you think the guy on the freighter out there who's kind of just motoring up river really cares if it's like, I mean, if it's really windy and nasty and stormy out, maybe. But general conditions out there probably really don't make any difference to them one way or the other. Now, if you're in a little skiff and it's a ripper tide out there and the wind is up and you're like, in a compromised, position when all of a sudden the outboard goes out or something like that, and you're relying on oars, that is not anything in the realms of the thinking that the guy on the freighter is doing. Like nothing is the same. But you are on a boat and you are on the river, right? And so there is a difference inside of that. Each one of us has to build that boat up and understanding what that boat means to each one of us. Like, a lot of times people want to see this major, like, change that is all of a sudden going to, like, I don't know what it is that people would expect the change to look like. All of a sudden you just wake up one day and you get this paycheck and it has like this amazing purchasing power to it. Like all of a sudden, like this paycheck will then this one paycheck will cover all the monthly bills, and then you got a whole nother paycheck that's going to come that you can do whatever you want with. And like I think people anticipate that there's some sort of realm of possibility that that could show up for them, and I'm thinking that is not going to happen like that. Now, that sort of circumstance in your life, that sort of scenario can exist, but you have to create it. You can't expect somebody to deliver that to you, but you can create that sort of environment. You cut back on your expenses as much as possible and increase your flow as much as possible, then yes, you very much well could be in that condition. And then you would look out there and say, man, this isn't that bad. I can buy a house, I can buy into stocks, I can buy into whatever investments, I can start businesses, I can go get educations, I can go do whatever it is that I need to do in order to be successful in this environment. But to think that I can sit here and complain about it, hoping that by showing up to work every day and being dedicated to my job, that somehow a politician is going to come out and feel sorry for me and then create this system of inclusiveness that everybody can then enjoy a retirement and health and all this other stuff. Like, I don't know where it is that people come up with this concept that this is possible. Like, I'm not saying that ain't a possibility within the society, within the economy, but it's during the cycle. Like, if you go from being not industrious at all to being an industrious people who then start ramping up their production, producing great stuff, sending that stuff out there to the world, and the world starts sending the money, and you start increasing your standard of living, that moment right there, that's an amazing spot to be. I mean, damn, yeah, awesome. Who wouldn't want to be there? But we're not there. That's gone. That's a time of long ago. All our manufacturers are now finding it ever increasingly more difficult to compete here in the United States as far as being a manufacturer. When you got other nations out there who are essentially building the same things that we are doing, and they're going to do it almost as good, and they're going to do it a hell of a lot cheaper than we're doing it. Unless you make some sort of government interference into the matter with tariffs or subsidies or something, it's just not a feasible thing to even have. Look at the soybean farmers. Uh, Even right now, they're not competitive against Brazil. They're doing this trade deal with China, but it's almost like a favor, right? It's not like they're buying it from us because it's like, we got the best soybean price. That's not what's happening at all. And understanding that to be the case, it really gives you a much better understanding. It's like, dang, man, what am I supposed to expect from my job? There was a time in which that those manufacturer jobs were so plentiful and distributed stuff out there to the world, and the world sending us that money. We got to share that experience with each other. Right? Like, if you were able to elevate your standard of living because you elevated your standard of living and were essentially the consumer within the economy, everything that you were consuming was benefiting the people who you were consuming with, who you were buying that consumption from. All those people who got to elevate their standard of living too. But now we have to think about how it is that we are getting this new money. It doesn't come in from the manufacturing. It comes in from debt issuance. People who have first access to that money, they get to spend it at face value. They get to enjoy it. Now, there's two ways of people going with this new money because it's debt issuance. They take that new money and go buy into a luxurious experience. They put themselves on the bottom side of the wedge because now they have to work and to acquire the money, the funds, in order to pay back that debt. But then other people went out there and borrowed that money and bought cash flowing assets with it. And now they're up on the other side of the wedge, letting something else pay that debt off while they're getting a little bit of revenue from it. This is completely opposite directions that people have taken with the debt issuance. And that's the problem we face. It's either beers or saws, right? And most people just go off and buy beer when they should be buying saws. Many of you know about the beers and saws analogy, where if a economy was to invest into beers, you would find a very active economy lighting up, lots of, people talking about all the greatness that's happening because there's a lot of activity, economic activity that happens within the consumption of beer. The production of beer, the distribution of beer, the selling of beer, the advertisement, all the stuff that goes with it. There's a lot of economic activity that happens when you are in beer. So if you can imagine everything either being beer or sauce, right? It's either this consumable item or it's this industrious item that is like a tool that is going to invest into production or services of something going into the future. So if everything was invested into beer, right, you would see a whole lot of economic activity while the consumption of beer is taking place. But once the consumption of beer is gone, that's it. It's over. And then the hangover begins because now you have to work to try and earn money to pay for that beer. Remember, this was an investment. We invested into beer to have economic activity, and man, did it fire off. However, if we had taken that money and invested it into saws, right, took those saws, cut up a bunch of lumber, put it together and built something and then sold that production off, eventually selling that production would have paid for the saws, and continuing the operation of the saws would have given us enough money to now buy as many beers and saws as we want going into the future. Right? Now, that's the unfortunate situation we now face, is that we do not invest in the saws. Nor could we. Even if we did invest in saws, we can cut up all the lumber we want. Nobody's going to buy our manufactured goods because we're going to demand way too much money for it because we have to in order to pay the saw back. It's just not a good investment for us anymore. We just can't make it work because our standard of living is too high. See, if we could take those saws, cut up a bunch of stuff, sell that product off, and then take that product and then say, hey, man, yes, we have an elevated standard of living with it, but we can't do it like that anymore because we go to sell the product and there's somebody else out there who says, hey, man, we do it cheaper than you do. You can't sell your product to hear the world. You might be able to try and buy it yourself, but that's not going to really work out either because you live in debt. All right. So you're going to have to find somebody out there to sell it to. And if you don't, you better find a consumable item instead. Oh, well, maybe beer, because if we buy beer, boom, man, that gets consumed right away. Lots of economic activity. Don't have to worry about trying to sell it to anybody. Mhm. And that's sad. It's sad to say it, sad to see it, but it's also actually kind of relieving when you think about it in a ways that you know that it's not going to work, right? You know that there's no way that it's coming back and that it's not going to be a functional thing for us to even consider. So now what is it that we can do? Because we know that we do have jobs out there that we can go to. There's plenty of them, right? You can go flip burgers, drink beer, or serve beers, drive trucks, do all this stuff. And there's some pretty good jobs out there that pay fairly well. So, like, you might be able to get into like one of those jobs and then cut back on your expenses and then have a little bit of extra that comes from it. It's very rare that it occurs, but, depending on how it is that you are disciplined and what it is that you have for your life and the condition in which that you're putting yourself in, there's a very real possibility that you could get a little bit of extra from a decent job that's out there. Now, if that is the case, cool. Most people, not going to happen. You're going to have to go to your day job, and with that day job, it's barely going to be enough to cut the mustard on anything that you're doing out there, the apartment, the car, and all that other stuff. If you want any more in your life, you are going to have to go for extra. And now extra, oops, let me go and sorry guys, I don't mean to interrupt here, but I don't want to miss these super chats. Thank you again, T Flats. I love how you expanded on the riverboat and yacht analogy. Honestly, perfect. The heavy winds, the outboard breaking, the oars, big waves. Haha. Right. Yeah, you just kind of have to consider it, the position for yourself. But um oh shit, I already lost where I was at before I started that. Where were we? Okay, so what is it that you can do? Because you're probably most likely not going to be able to use your day job to be enough. So you're going to have to be industrious to get that extra. And this is really where I think a lot of times people get very upset with me. They're saying, "Oh, dude, you just want everybody just to be a slave to the new world order and just kill themselves working every day." And I'm thinking, "No, I don't really want you to do anything. I'm telling you what I had to do and what I am doing or what I'm attempting to do. I mean, look at me. I'm out here at 2 o'clock in the morning doing live streams, not just because I love it, but I do. Um, but it's part of like, making sure that you're constantly in the approach, right? Or in the attempt. I don't know how to put it. Not everybody is going to be in the successful being, but you got to be moving towards. Once you're moving towards, you have a much better opportunity of acquiring it. And this is where I think a lot of times that it just becomes very frustrating for people to say, hey, man, I have put in tons and tons and tons of effort towards something extra and it hasn't worked out for me. All right. And I know that is so discouraging. It is so discouraging to hear that and to actually feel it within yourself. And I know that feeling myself. Like having YouTube channel and to my opinion, moving into more of a successful YouTube channel. I've had lots of YouTube channels in the past that weren't successful. Right? I mean, they would get some views, but most of the time most people didn't really watch the channel and it wasn't really that popular, as far as like something like the Uneducated Economist is. If I was to have been discouraged about putting videos out because of all the other channels that I had ever done, I never would have started this one. I never would have taken the consideration to be a personal journal that I would just come out and just kind of share some of my thoughts and ideas and let other people kind of experience some of those thoughts and ideas, never really intending on anybody ever even being here. I wouldn't have had that ability to do that if it wasn't for all the previous channels that didn't work out. It's like it's part of it. Failure is part of it. Like even the times when you are feeling most discouraged, like even now myself with the channel and everything else, I feel a lot of times I've been stagnant. I don't really feel like I've advanced in a lot of ways. It's 8 years now, and I think, man, so many other people with their channels have done so much more, and I think, and don't compare yourself, all this other. And then I realized, man, no, there was a lot that I was doing over these last few years, especially with the live streams and coming out and continuously pushing 45-minute, hour-long live streams. That has given me the ability to come out and talk like without dead air space. And that is not something that is easy to do for a lot of people if you haven't practiced or learned how to do it. And so now here it is, years down the road of doing it so often all the time. I really feel like I've developed a skill that I can talk just like nonstop as much as I want without ever shutting up. And I know for a lot of people that might be an annoyance, but to be able to do it in an entertaining way that keeps people somewhat interested and continuing on with the conversation, providing the information and all that, it's, I mean, it takes time to learn how to do that. All right, let's read some comments. All right. Inflation expectations remain well elevated on the credible threat of tariffs, and as long as that works, they don't really need to printer. No, they really don't at this point. And besides, the printer press works best. Like the whole quantitative easing and everything. Like I think this is something important because a lot of times I hear, oh, they're about ready to fire up the printing presses again, and I'm like, I don't like. They might fire up some like monetary expansion, but it's not going to be like this huge balance sheet expansion like quantitative easing unless they're at the lower bound of zero. Like that's where quantitative easing happens, is at the lower bound of zero. And the reason is because they don't have any downward adjustment to interest rates, right? See, this is the whole point of quantitative easing, is to have a monetary policy when operating at the lower bound of zero with no more interest rate adjustments. That's why quantitative easing and forward guidance is deployed. That's the tool that they use at the lower bound. And so until they achieve the lower bound again, the credible threat of the interest rate adjustment itself is the monetary policy tool, because lowering interest rates far enough below that neutral rate will not be enough to actually stimulate the economy. Now, as time goes on, we are finding that neutral interest rate is rising, and we will find out whether or not that has actually plateaued out, gone up or down. Nobody really knows. Myron, the newest Fed official, seems to think that it's dropping. Time will tell. So if that neutral interest rate is rising and continues to rise, then yes, the Federal Reserve will be in a position in which that the dropping of the interest rates, the lowering of the Fed funds rate, could actually stimulate the economy. It could get far enough below neutral, but then again, they would have to be all the way back at the lower bound to zero. Right? They'd have to drop interest rates all the way to zero to be far enough below neutral to actually stimulate the economy, because just getting just barely below neutral isn't going to cut it. You got to be well enough below neutral. And again, if you run into the lower bound of zero, then that's it. No more downward adjustments to interest rates. And if the neutral interest rate hasn't risen far enough, then they will have to deploy quantitative easing and forward guidance, the promising of keeping interest rates significantly low for the significant amount of future, in order to create what? An inflation expectation. So if you have inflation expectations that are elevated due to the credible threat of tariffs, and you have an elevated Fed funds rate that is now has the ability for the Federal Reserve to communicate about interest rate adjustments, which cannot be done at the lower bound. They cannot communicate about interest rate adjustments at the lower bound because there is none, right? So you can only have that at an elevated Fed funds rate. This is exactly how the Federal Reserve is conducting monetary policy. And I know for a lot of people, it gets very confusing. I mean, even just the last 2 minutes of what I was saying is very confusing for a lot of people. But when you start to like really internalize it in this fashion, that neutral interest rate is the key focus of the Fed funds rate, or the Federal Reserve, and where the Fed funds rate is. And that if the Fed funds rate is at neutral, that's where they want to be. They don't want to be below or above it. They want to be at neutral. So whether neutral hits them or if they are able to bring the Fed funds rate down to neutral, that's what they're shooting for. And so as everybody else kind of confuses the situation on what it is that the Federal Reserve is going to do, especially with the idea of quantitative easing, like the money printer go off, like that is such a like that's not going to happen until they get to the lower bound of zero. Right, that's it. I mean, that's where quantitative easing and forward guidance is deployed. Not saying that they're not doing forward guidance, but it's more of like signaling. Forward guidance is a whole monetary policy that is actually deployed, named that forward guidance monetary policy. Mainstream media says it. Everybody knows about it. We promise to keep interest rates for the foreseeable future at lower interest, lower bound, blah, 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 blah. That's forward guidance. Right? It's not the same as what we are experiencing now, which is signaling. Right? And this is different because forward guidance is a monetary policy that they teach people. Right? They say, hey, man, forward guidance is this, right? It's when the Federal Reserve promises to keep interest rates at a particular level for a foreseeable future in order to meet a particular goal. What we experience now is, well, we got data dependent. We got Myron out there saying that we got to drop it down to zero because of the neutral. And you got this other one. This is deploying of information that is signaling, right? It signals to the market because at some point, if they were to all come out and deliver almost the exact same message, regardless of like anything else, just saying all of a sudden they just started lining up together, the market would react to that information. Right now, they see it as dissent. How many dissenting votes do you find or hear about within the Federal Reserve right now? They are keeping it so open-ended that nobody has any idea on what it is that's happening. The closer we get to the cut, or the closer we get to the interest rate adjustment or the meeting, the more they'll start to refine that communication in order to deliver the message. Right? I know this is so it's such an esoteric way of looking at it. You have to have so much more information in order to really gather the idea. But they have already communicated how it is that they can tighten or ease financial conditions by deploying their words. All right, more super chats. Let's go check them out. Thank you guys for this. I mean, I wasn't really expecting that many people this early in the morning, but we got 96 people watching, 53 likes, $40 in super chats. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Negative talk can take down a group. One guy refused to float and got negative. I saw how quickly all the other travel nurses started to chime in. He went home sick, very infectious. Yeah, you're right. And I totally agree with that. One of the things that, I worked a few different job sites, and sometimes you're in a group of, with guys who talk a lot of crap to each other, and sometimes it's fun, but at some points it gets really annoying and it gets really like demeaning and it gets very negative and it's very difficult to operate in. It makes it frustrating. It doesn't make it motivating. It doesn't make you ambitious. It doesn't do any of that kind of stuff. And ultimately what it is, it's this power trip and ego trip amongst the other people who are on there trying to, elevate themselves amongst, the other guys on the job site. And that those different types of environments, to be able to recognize and operate through those things without really having a major impact on you is incredibly difficult. Even being aware of it, it still doesn't make it possible to avoid, because essentially every single one of us carries, and I know this sounds so weird, but every single one of us carries an energy around us. And what I mean by it. When you walk into a room and you're carrying good energy, or you see the people in the room carrying good energy, it's interacting. Like, people light up when they see you, or you see, like, when you walk into a room, you light up because of how awesome the energy is in the room. So everybody's carrying this. The problem that we now face is that we think that we're independent and in control of all this energy. We're not, right? Now, you are somewhat aware of it, and you can be aware of it, and then by being aware of it, be able to put yourself in an energy in which that you are then in a positive, essentially a positive field. But if you are surrounded by the negative, right? Negative people talking, negative experiences, just negative things that are happening. What ends up taking place is that energy ends up moving into your field, and and whether it's just like you're trying to just like, hey man, I'm ignoring this. This ain't nothing. Man, it doesn't have nothing to do with me, right? That energy passes through the field and it leaves a residual negative energy within your field. You're gonna remember the conversation. You heard it. All you had to do was just hear it, right? All you had to do was see it. All you had to do was be in the experience of being around it. And now you got this negative energy that you are carrying with you. So if you are constantly surrounded by that environment, constantly toxic, experiences, when you take that with you, even though you're trying to leave it, like I leave it at the job site or whatever, you're not. I guarantee you, you are not. You are carrying that with you. And so as time goes on, right, the negative energy will fall away. However, the experience that you get all day long, right, you carry with you. You have to understand that. And this is where I think a lot of times people just don't even realize that they are in a negative environment that they have just grown so accustomed to. Now they just wonder, why is it that they have nothing but negative experiences in their life? It's just like because of this field that is in there, right? Your thoughts. You wonder why, people at work are giving you hell, why it is that the traffic is always congested and people cutting you off, why it is that the person at the grocery store was rude to you. All these things are happening because you're carrying this negative energy around with you everywhere you go. Not not even your fault, just because of the experience of where it is that you have been residing, working, being, going to school, whatever. You end up carrying that energy. So that's where it's important to to recognize it and then put yourself in groups that are positive, uplifting, carrying into the ideas of where it is that you want to go, because they're going to fill your energy field with positive energy that then you can then use for yourself. So when you go to the grocery store, you get a pleasant experience. Why the traffic is always seems to be free, flowing and green lights and everything else. That's the experiences you end up getting from it all. But most people don't know that. No, most people like even hear the words that I just used, and they're just like they roll their eyes and they're like, "Dude, you're such a hippie, crystal gripper." Go back to smoking the peace pipe or something. But this is my experience. This is what I've done in my life. How else are you supposed to get the positive to come to you? If you're just sitting there talking nothing but negative and having negative conversations, experience negativity with people, that's what you're going to experience. That's what your life is going to seem like. That's why there's always traffic congestions. That's why the people at the grocery store are rude. It's all that. All right. Infamous NYC. Thank you so much again for the $10. Okay. Okay. Says negative talk has taken down units. People will quiet complain or people will quit complain and quiet complain and cause trouble. It's God, I can't hardly see. It's important to drown that out no matter where you are, especially if you're trying to level up financially. Yeah, and it's like I said, it's almost impossible to drown it out too. Like just being like literally just hearing the words or seeing it or just being in the room itself. Like nothing has to be said or heard or seen or anything else, but being in that room, you will still, or in that area, in that field, right? You will pick it up. There will be residual that comes into your field that you will then carry with you regardless. Like you can't not do that. So yeah, just be aware of it. Yeah. I mean, how many times have you ever had like, you're sitting there having a pleasant day and all of a sudden somebody comes in and just blam says something and then leaves, and all of a sudden you're all like, your nervous system's all wrecked after that, and you're like, man, what the hell? Screw that guy, right? That's what I'm talking about right there. It was that negative energy that came into your field and then the left, right? All of a sudden it's gone, but now you're still carrying it. Oh, screw that guy, man. Like I think I experienced that not too long ago at work. It was something. It was so silly, right? It was such a silly little thing that had happened, And yet here it is, I'm all lit up about it, all kind of pissed, and I'm thinking, dude, just let it go. Like he should have let it go. You should let it go. Everybody should let it go because it's no big deal. But yet somehow I couldn't at the time, And even now when I bring it up, I think about it. It's kind of, it gets me a little aggravated. Even just in the idea of just bringing up the memory. I shouldn't even try to remember it. It should just be forgotten about and never even remembered. But even the idea of it, again, brings up this negative energy that you guys might even be feeling within the video right now, just by hearing me talk about it, you know? So, you recognize these sort of things and then like be aware of it. Focus, you don't have to focus in on it, but just be aware of it, observe it, and then let it go, right? Simon, have you ever heard of Scott Adams? He wrote the comic Dilbert. Yeah, I think you'd like his newest book, Reframe Your Brain. Your message about meaning plus that book really helped me. Yeah, I should. I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks lately. Hey, is Cody up in the house? Right on. Hey, Cody. All right. I love it when Simon gets metaphysical. Dude had lifetimes of wisdom to share somehow. YouTube dad. All right. You're an old soul, man. Deep thinker. I'm shopping another work. I'm shopping another work truck now, looking at low mileage diesel, incredible deals everywhere. People are hurting for money. Yeah, just let it go, guys. Yeah, I hear you, Cody. Thanks for being here, bud. Yeah, I'm not looking for a new truck, but the other day, the other day. So I guess now it was the other day since. But on Thanksgiving, I was talking with my brother, and when we were younger, we did a lot of duck hunting. Like that was our thing. We were out all the time, out on the river hunting ducks. And as time goes on, just like everything, you kind of fall away from some of the old hobbies and fun things that you used to do. And I told him, I said, "Hey, man, Freddie wants to go duck hunting next year. Do you still have your gear?" And he's like, "Yeah, I have all my gear." And I'm thinking, okay, well, I have my shotguns, but I don't have any gear really, so I have to get all my gear. And I said, we'll have to get a boat. I don't have the boat anymore. And he goes, well, I have a 15 horse outboard. And I'm like, oh yeah, right. You got the 15 horse outboard. I didn't realize that. He goes, oh yeah, it's brand new. It hardly has any hours on it. I'm like, perfect. That's exactly what we need. I'm gonna go look for a boat. So I go out on Facebook Marketplace, started finding boats all over the place. There's tons of them, and I see a bunch of them are coming up pretty regularly too. So I agree. Like people are selling off a lot of toys right now, getting out of the, hobbies that or selling off the things that they had for hobbies that they're no longer doing. So I'm gonna try and pick up a 12-foot aluminum skiff to go duck hunting next year with, and yeah, maybe I'll show you guys that adventure as that comes up. Alright. I sent you an email to look at after the stream. It's sort of important. All right, buddy. Yeah, I'll take a look for it. All right. Good morning. Yeah, good morning to you. Do we have any comments, questions, anything we want to bring up? We want to talk about the housing market more. Will prices in the U.S. go up if Japan raises interest rates? Will prices in the U.S. go up if interest rates? I don't know if those two are necessarily going to be correlated to the point that prices, like individual prices here in the United States, are going to go up. I would imagine that you'll probably find some price, reaction to an interest rate adjustment in Japan, but for the most part, prices aren't. I know it's difficult for a lot of people to hear, but prices aren't necessarily due to the money printer, right? And that I know people roll their eyes and they shake their head when they hear that, but you have to think like quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4 failed to produce an inflationary scenario for the Fed. This quantitative easing from the great financial crisis quadrupled the balance sheet. It took it from 850 billion to over $4.5 trillion. It was more than a quadrupling. What we experienced from the COVID quantitative easing was a doubling of the balance sheet. So there was far more on a percentage basis of money printer taking place during the great financial crisis than had taken place during COVID. Right? Now, more dollars were created during COVID, yes, but on a percentage basis, the expansion of the balance sheet, way, way, way more during the great financial crisis. And it failed to produce that inflationary scenario. So it's important to understand the differences that were taking place from all the expansion of the money back in the day that failed to produce inflation, and then the expansion of the money that came from COVID that did create inflation, because there was a major difference that happened inside of it, and that is the severing of the supply chain and the stimulus checks that went out at the exact same time. So if you had thrown out the stimulus checks, I think, yes, you would have had a flash in the pan inflationary scenario, right? All that money going out there, all these people have access to it, being able to spend that money at all channels at the same time. However, because unless that stimulus was ever present, like meaning that they were constantly giving stimulus out there even to this day, then it wouldn't have been inflationary, because, right, it's ever increasing amounts of new money that would be coming in, creating that thing to go up. But if you have an instantaneous flash in the pan, everybody goes out there, spends it, well, then the money's gone, it moves up to the rich, and there's no more new money to come in to keep that expansion going, keeping that consuming going. So if you sever the supply chain, right, and then hand out a stimulus package, people go out there and they cleared out all the shelves, but you couldn't bring new product in. So now all of a sudden we have a supply demand imbalance, right? Regardless of the stimulus checks, you don't need to put any more stimulus out there. We have a severed supply chain, supply demand imbalances, and now if you can keep that supply chain broken, key to it, keep it broken. COVID, war, tariffs, more promise of tariffs, whatever. Game 2 plan, if they vote the tariffs to be illegal, keep the supply chain broken, and you can keep the inflationary scenario going, because it's supply demand imbalances. Once you see it in this fashion, then you stop blaming the money printer and you stop looking for other things out there, like within the currency markets, to try and create an inflationary scenario, because that is what the Federal Reserve wants you to believe is an inflationary scenario is going to take place. It's ever present. That's the point of the credible threat of tariffs, the credible threat of COVID, credible threat of wars, credible threat of all this stuff keeps the elevated inflationary expectations, which is where they want you to be. If you keep that inflation expectations elevated, it will pull the neutral interest rate ever higher, making the economy far less restricted than anybody would ever give it consideration for. And then the top 20% of consumers can go out there, top 20% of household incomes can go out there and be the consumer. That's what we're that's what we're experiencing. You are not going to be able to go be the consumer anymore for the Fed. Like, you are going to consume, don't get me wrong, you're going to go buy a steaks and you're going to go buy beer and you're going to go buy the stuff, but you're not going to consume on a level of what the top 20% of household incomes are going to do. You're not going to do it. And I don't care how many tax breaks they give you or how much your wages increase, you are not going to increase it enough or get enough of a break to increase your consumption enough to compare to what it is that the top 20% of households are doing. And I know it's like almost crazy to think, like, how much could they possibly be consuming if that's the case? Like, that is an insane amount of consumption happening with just a small group of people. But yes, that is very much the case. It is very much the case. They spend way more than everybody else does. The bottom 50% of consumers are essentially non-existent. Yeah. The top 50% of household incomes are non-existent in the consumption, comparatively. All right. You guys are so awesome. Thank you so much for all the support. I really appreciate it. YouTube it's such a funny place. I love being out here. I love doing this stuff, but to try and rely on YouTube or any of this for any kind of consistency is like not happening. It is so it is it's the most volatile thing in the world. Anyway, but you guys make it very consistent, and I really appreciate you. T Flats, thank you so much again. I bought a $3,000 pickup truck 2 years ago. It made me over $150,000 so far. Not bad for a junker. Yeah, absolutely. And so, and that's another thing. Like, what is it that we can do? $3,000 pickup truck, and you used it to make $150,000. Bam, right? That's the way you do this sort of thing, is to understand that you need to go for extra money. By going for that extra money, now you can position yourself in a way that you can then acquire the assets, because that's really what it comes down to. It's the reason why the boomers are being accused of having luxury communism or whatever, is because throughout their life they accumulated these assets and now they don't want to lose them, right? They want to hold on to it, just like anything else out there. You know, when I listen to people talk about how it is that Roosevelt came in and busted up the unions and did all these, like, all this stuff because everybody had gotten too big and too strong and too concentrated and stuff. Ultimately, what he did is he kind of closed the window for people to take the same route of operations to get to the wealth that those people had done. Right. And so again, like, I know a lot of people, it wasn't fair and all this other stuff. And there's, like, I get it, man. A lot of great things, a lot of bad things. Okay, whatever. You can take the good, the bad. I'm just saying that when people have accumulated a whole chunk of wealth, then they say, oh man, you shouldn't have been able to do that. We have to close the window of opportunity for other people to do that too. Right? I mean, now that you got it and we see how you did it, we're gonna shut down operations so that nobody else can ever do that again. It is just like, okay, so once everybody figures it out, then you stop. Okay, got it. All right. But that's kind of the way it ends up going down, right? They just basically, like, secure for themselves and, like, oh, sorry, yeah, we got ours, but we made regulations so nobody else can ever do that. Um, but I kind of think about that as far as, what it is that people need to do. Well, don't think about doing that, right? Do something different. Like, there's plenty of opportunities out there to figure out a place to position yourself for cash flow. I am not suggesting this to anybody out there, but I was on Coinbase and I saw that you can stake Ethereum and other, cryptos and get a return on it. Now, I did some Cosmos, right? Um, just to see what the experience would be like. But there is a spot in which that it could possibly have a yield, right? A return that is coming in on this asset that I had purchased, this, digital asset. Time will tell if it ends up working out. But it is a position in which that, again, it's money coming in. It doesn't matter how much to me. I don't care if it's $1 or $20 or $100. To me, it doesn't make any difference on how much it is. Is the fact that it is there and that it is happening. So this is the position in which that I had moved to, just because I could see that it was there and it might be an option. May not work out for me. Failure is a learning lesson, right? So that's one place, right? You could go into bonds. Bonds pay yields, right? They don't pay a high yield, but you might be able to at least put some savings away if you're not using your cash for anything. Money markets or treasuries or something like that might be a place that you can get a return. Rental properties are returns. Dividend paying stocks are returns. Starting a business, working it with somebody else, says, hey man, I got the skills, but I don't have anything else. And I'm like, well, hell, I got money, but I don't have the skills. Maybe we can work out some sort of deal where I'll buy all the equipment and then you'll pay me back over the course of a couple of years plus interest, and I can make some money off of it, and you'll have all the equipment, and we can, make this great deal happen. Being in the business with somebody who has the skills but doesn't have the opportunity, doesn't have the capital to do it. These are the sort of things and the mindsets of entrepreneurs that have then elevated themselves away from the working class individual. The working class individual didn't have to worry about doing those things back in the day, because they could just go get a job and be a normal person and live a normal life and have a normal experience, and that was totally normal. But that's not the case anymore. It's not normal anymore. So you have to do things that are not normal, which is you have to figure out a way to get into those assets. And, a lot of times I will find people who will discourage you in every single asset imaginable. You will say, man, that I might consider buying into gold. Don't buy into gold. What are you going to do? You can't eat gold. Gold is worthless. Nobody wants your gold, right? People will say that all the time. Meanwhile, here gold is running up to their all-time highs. Silver's at all-time highs. And there was people out there who told me all the time, laughed at me because I was buying silver when I had, when I was going broke. I'm happy as hell I have that silver now. It's a hell of an insurance policy and it gives me the ability to sleep at night. And I love that more than just about anything. I had so many people tell me, dude, don't buy a house. You're buying a house at the height of the market. You're going to be so underwater. You're going to lose it. You're going to be crying your eyes out in a couple of years. Here it is, 4 years later. My house is worth more than what I had paid for it by a lot. I have so much equity in it. Even if I was to drop the house down to the amount that I owe on it, it would be one of the cheapest houses on the markets right now because of how expensive everything is around here. It's been absolutely the opposite experience that everybody was telling me it was going to happen. So I have absolutely no problems being in silver. I have no problems being in real estate. The stock portfolio has done extremely well. People said, dude, don't be in that. You're going to fail. It's going to go to zero. You're going to lose all your money. Your 401k is going to go to crap. All right. Completely opposite on that. People told me, don't be holding cash. Cash is worthless. Cash is trash. Don't have the cash on hand. And I'm thinking, no, every single time there was a buying opportunity, and I was able to take advantage of it because I take a position in cash just for that exact purpose of it. It was just like there's nothing out there that I'm not willing to participate in at any like at all. Like there's nothing, and everybody warns me about all of it every single time, and I'm thinking they're scared. They live in fear. I don't live in fear. I just don't live in fear. I mean, and go. I mean, for somebody who had lived broke their entire life, like I still feel broke. Like I know I'm not. I look at my portfolios. I look at like the bills that I've paid. I look at everything and I'm like, man, I'm in a decent position considering what I was in. But deep down inside, I still can't shake the subconscious belief that I'm broke. I can't. I don't know how. I can't. I literally don't know the feelings of not being broke. Even when I have all the evidence in front of me that says quite the opposite. You know? Oh well, I guess it's just one of those things I have to carry with me, no matter how much I observe it and try to, think about it and let it go. I can't. Okay, I'm broke. I don't have any money. I mean, unless there's a really good dip in the crypto price or gold or something like that, and then I have the money and I'll go out and buy that. But until then, I don't have any money. I don't have any. Where are my glasses? Steve, why would you refuse to involve an entire asset class from your view? Yeah. Righty. I love precious metals, ammo, food production, high quality weapons. Screw crypto. Well, everybody has their spot. Like I said, I mean, I didn't want cryptocurrencies to be as big of a position in my portfolio as it is. I didn't want that to be the case. It just did. It just happened to be that way. And so when I think about what it is that, that individuals can do for themselves as far as being able to position themselves, to deny anything out there is, I mean, why deny? Why not be in a little position in crypto? I don't understand. Like, why wouldn't you want to do that? Like people were like, don't be in bonds, and I'm like, I got a Treasury Direct account. Does anybody else? I mean, it was. Why wouldn't you want to be in bonds? Why wouldn't you want to be in the stock market? Why wouldn't you want to own a business? Why wouldn't you want to have a house? Why wouldn't you want to own gold? Why wouldn't you want to have all those things? I don't understand. Like, I want all those things, and people were like, oh, it might go to zero. And I'd be like, but what if? I mean, what if aliens came down? What if, a big tidal wave came through? I mean, what ifs are all over the place. What is? What is happening? Are cryptos going away? No. Did gold and silver fail to prove themselves in their 5,000 year long history? No. That didn't fail. Do I still live in a house that's comfortable with, if my boys each having their own? Yep. I got like the reality of the situation is far different from people's hypothetical thoughts of what it is that could be possibly coming. There's nothing that I don't want to miss out on, right? I want all of them too. People will deny BTC all the way to millions. Yeah, and that's, they will. And it's cool if they don't want to be in it. Like, I don't have a problem with anybody who doesn't want to be in BTC. I mean, it's like I don't necessarily want to be in RIP, in XRP. So, and there's plenty of people who want to be in that. So, like, everybody has their choices and where it is that they want to go. I'm just like, you know, for me personally, when it comes to a digital currency, when I look at that, I have a little bit of a portfolio. Like, I have a few various altcoins and stuff, but pretty much it's just Bitcoin. That's it. There's really nothing else. I don't see anything else that these other currencies can do that Bitcoin isn't doing or could do in the future with the secondary layer system. To me, like, all the rest of them are really secondary to Bitcoin, right? Not saying that they're not good projects or that they wouldn't take off and be well. And although, like, I have bought into some of these things, just so I have some skin in the game, I'm not denying them. I'm just like, I just have kind of like my belief in what it is that's happening with cryptocurrencies. And when it comes to crypto, there's really nothing else outside of Bitcoin. Yeah. I mean, are there other projects that do things that Bitcoin does? Yeah, absolutely there is. But there's really nothing that those things are doing that Bitcoin can't do with the secondary layer system or won't be able to do in the future at some point anyway. So, that's just my personal belief. Other people might disagree with that, whatever. I mean, to me, I want to be in everything. Like, there's nothing that I don't want to deny have access to. I don't know why I try scrolling if I don't have my glasses on. Okay. I'll just be incorrect. Nothing defiant though, Brody. Only time will answer that question. Silver and gold ETFs has been my all-star investment this year. Wish I put into it. Yeah. This guy has too many accounts. All right. Live broke but dress and invest like you're wealthy. Yeah. Well, and that's just the thing. Like, once you start down the path of accumulating assets and you start feeling more comfortable with that position, even when it's up, down, or sideways, you just start feeling a lot better about buying into that and being in those positions. Then you kind of have a tendency to like want to buy more, right? Instead of like wanting a new pair of shoes or, wanting a whatever, a toy or something like that, you want to buy into more of a particular stock that had fallen in price or has dropped, down. That's more of like where you want to end up going. And as a lot of times people will get a charge off of like spending money, like, what do they call that? Shop therapy or whatever, spend, when people are like spending money to try and make themselves feel better. I think I get that when I buy a stock, when I buy into Bitcoin, or when I'm, doing something of an investment kind of nature. When I look at my paycheck and I see like how much was taken out for my 401k, I get a little bit of a charge on that. Like, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, cool. More investment, more into the portfolios, more asset accumulation." And I don't necessarily think about like how much it is. Like, don't get me wrong, I do. I think like how much the dollar amount is and how much it's gotten to. But I'm not like hyper focused in on it. I'm more like focused in on whether or not I can actually get it deployed to these positions. And if I am able to actually get some money out there, because the more I do it, the more it grows. And then one day I go and check it, I'm like, wow, it's a lot more than I hadn't thought it was. Or, when the stocks go down or something like that, it's just like, wow, we took a big hit today. Maybe it's the time to jump in a little bit more. these are sort of my thoughts. I don't think about where it is that I can spend my money on toys. Like I don't think about the luxurious experiences anymore. Like that's not where my mind goes with my money. My thoughts are going towards where is it that I can put this money? How much do I need to pay bills with? Where are my bills this month? What are my extra bills this month? Because there's always extra bills, you know. And then what do I have left over to move out there? What the total is, you know, sometimes I'll check that and get kind of excited about it, but I don't really think about the total at this point. I just think about like making sure that I can get some money in, keep my expenses low, and then move that extra into those positions. And that's it. Just that energy of thought, you know. All right, Cody. Yes, I have enough change to roll over to the colder side of my bed for a bit. Enough charge. Oh, I'm sorry. Enough charge. Alright. Laundry soap is powerful currency. What is the end game of the investing? What's the end game? Is there an end game? I don't think there is an end game. Is there? Seems like an obvious question, but when it's time to enjoy the fruits, 70 years old, living life on the beach with no care in the world and save time for fam. Huh. What is the end game of all this? Yeah, I mean, I guess that would be it. 70 years old, living on the beach with no care in the world. That would be it. That's the end game. Uh, nice. 72 likes. Yeah, everybody's hitting the like button today, man. Thank you so much. I didn't even really have to ask. Everybody's just going out there and just nailing it. I really appreciate you guys doing that. $45 in super chats. You guys are always so supportive of the channel with 100 people watching so early in the morning, too. I mean, what time is it? 4 o'clock in the morning here on the West Coast. All right. Shift is almost over for me. Hear me out. Computer and solar panel equal infinite crypto. Yeah. All right. Wow, it's cold out here. Some of my grandkids are older than crypto, yet people will say crypto is here to stay. That's clearly magical thinking. It's unproven by definition. The duration, uh, time duration is a thing. Yeah, I don't think they're putting this genie back in the bottle. Like this isn't shrinking, this is growing. Like the network effect of Bitcoin is expanding. There's more products, there's more people involved, there's more wallets, there's just more happening with the cryptocurrencies. It's not shrinking, it's growing. That is something that you can't really deny. Now, I'm not going to, deny the idea that it could completely go away. I mean, anything can happen like that. But the reality of the situation is quite different from the idea of it going to zero or going away. It's like it's expanding, it's getting more popular, it's getting more regulated, it's getting more into the hands of institutional investors. Um, yeah, no, that's like I mean, to each their own on it, but to me, this isn't something that's going to go away. It's going to get bigger and better, into the future. So, and my whole goal is just to get one Bitcoin. That's it. I don't have any other goal with cryptos other than that. Like I have no intentions, no expectations, no beliefs, or anything else that goes with it. My whole thing is one Bitcoin. And ultimately, I guess it's for my kids. I'm gonna give it to them, give it to the boys. Like when I pass, they'll have all my assets. So that's like kind of the thing that I'm thinking, is just to have one Bitcoin and then just be in possession of it. There's not going to be that. They're not really going to make that many more, right? I mean, most of the Bitcoins are out now. There's what 19 million of them or something. There's only going to be 21 million, so they're going to take another 100 plus years or whatever to come out as far as mining the rest of them. What you have for Bitcoin is it. This is it. All of them are out. I mean, what we're going to experience is now available. Bitcoin is here now. So, yeah, like, how many people are there in the globe? How many Bitcoin are there? If you have one Bitcoin, that is incredibly unique. That is like you're so far from like even having half a Bitcoin makes you incredibly unique. And that's what I have right now is a half a Bitcoin. I would like to accumulate one whole Bitcoin. But to be in that position to have like one Bitcoin when there's only 20 million of them available out there to billions of people who may be interested in participating in the cryptocurrency market, it's just like, yeah, no, I don't really need to be second guessing that one. It's just like the idea that there's only a limited amount of gold and silver available. If everybody tried to get 1 ounce of silver, do you like here's the thing. How much do they produce in silver every year? Something like 900 million ounces. I forget exactly what it is. I guess I could look it up, but it's something like 900 million ounces mined every year. If you were to look at that and think, okay, at least 50% of that goes to industrial use, right? So that really only leaves about 400 or 500 million left. If every single American, right, the United States, if every single American decided that they were going to go out there and get just 1 ounce of silver, they would have pretty much eat up the entire industrial supply, or the entire supply for investment purposes after industrial use. Even if they want to go get 2 ounces of silver, that would pretty much eat up the entire global mining supply. Every American going for just 2 ounces of silver. Now, if you took into consideration Canada, Mexico, Russia, India, China, all of the Euro nations, Africa, and you took in all these people and everybody decided that they were just going to get 1 ounce of silver, just one. Do you know how much silver would be worth? It would be ungodly. Just the United States trying to get 1 ounce of silver would do it, let alone the rest of the world. But nobody does it. Nobody knows about silver. It's the most unloved, unappreciated, unnoticed, vital commodity known to man. And those who have positioned themselves in it are doing quite well with it. Those of us who bought into it, buying it as an insurance policy so that we would have something outside of the third party risk, are feeling less at risk. Every single day, it feels a little bit better. What time is it? How long have we been going at this? An hour and 20 minutes. Thank you guys for being here. All right. Don't think the government want. Oh, wait. I don't think the government want it going to zero. No, they don't want to be at zero. So requiring a fully functioning electrified civil society to function is anti-fragile. Fully functioning electrified civil society to function is anti-fragile. I don't know anti-fragile. I don't know about that. All right, corporations buying them all up. All right, Steve, you're talking about only Bitcoin and only Bitcoin operating its own mining system. We're still talking about Bitcoin here. All right, and all right, you think Bitcoin will ever crash back down to 50K or less? Oh, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I wouldn't be surprised at all. That thing is so volatile. It's just unreal. So dropping down to 50 would just be like, it would be like, yeah, huh. I think that might be a bit of a stretch for any kind of like um I don't know how do I say it, for any kind of sustaining at a lower price like that because ultimately from what I'm gathering, mining operations are very difficult under 90,000, right? Like I was reading articles like right now mining operations are shutting down because it's not profitable. once you start getting down to that into those lower numbers. And so when that becomes the case, then I think the mining operations start to concentrate into just a handful of the operators who are able to maybe find cheap electricity, or I don't know, maybe they're getting subsidized some way. I don't know, like what would actually give them the ability to continue to mine and be profitable, or at least continue to want to mine. Um, so in that case, then there would be, a situation in which that Bitcoin falling to a particularly low level would then, cease the mining operations or make the mining operations less profitable. And again, that might be a concentration case, but even in that, once the price does move back up, then it just makes the mining more profitable again, and then the miners jump back in. So even the concentration of miners taking place during this time, I think would end up giving way to people who are setting up mining operations again once the price moves back up and the profitability becomes present again. So again, like, I mean, how far down can it go to 50? Yeah, I guess it can, but then at some point, like, the miners aren't going to want to sell. Like, they'll just hold onto their Bitcoin that they mine, and then limit the amount of supply that comes out there, even though there's not much that supply that could come out. So I guess that wouldn't necessarily be the case. I don't know. Yeah, I don't see like I don't see it other realms of possibilities. I just don't see it sitting there for very long. Yeah. Oh, all right. How long do we want to go, guys? All right. A bunch of kids on computers would mine the last Bitcoins, I reckon. Well, I think it would take so much computing power by the end of the last coins that it would probably wouldn't happen with the regular computers. It would probably take a lot of computing power. Bitcoin dropping to 50K would be amazing. Would be going all in. If it dropped down to 50, yeah, I probably would be focusing in mostly on Bitcoin purchases after that. Oh my. I mean, look at us all. We're all talking about Bitcoin here. That's saying something. Yeah, I think I got a lot of black lung from mining Bitcoin. If you are savvy, the reading RSI, the monthly RSI on Bitcoin chart is a bit concerning. Major negative divergences has developed. Yeah, and that's where, like, I think, like, those who are into chart reading and doing those kind of analytics, I mean, I've always kind of been impressed by those guys who can really call it out, because to me it's almost like fortune telling, like they're able to see the future when it comes to these charts. But there's a lot of, like, systematic operations that happen that these people are kind of picking up on and notice. Um, but I don't get worried about, like, price moves like that, because I'm not really trying to make money at it like a day trader would be. Day trading operations, or people who are maybe, like, really concerned about where their retirement might be going or something like that. But in that case, you wouldn't want to be in something as volatile as, like, Bitcoin, because who knows what can happen tomorrow. Um, for me, I look at the volatility as, like, I don't look at it as concerning. Like, to me, I don't get scared about that. It's just something that I just kind of gotten used to. I think for, like, a lot of times people get worried when they think, man, I'm going to use this money for something. Like, oh, I want to buy a house here in the future, and I'm going to cash in my Bitcoin to do it. And then when Bitcoin starts to fall, they see their house falling away as well, or their opportunities to get a house. And that's really where the mindset comes in, is just like, what are you doing with this investment? I mean, are you looking to switch this over to another investment? Like, you're hoping Bitcoin goes up to, $1 million so that you can go and get a house. And then when you start to see that Bitcoin falling, you see your house fall away as well. That like, kind of mindset on how that works ends up being very, like, I don't know how to put it, like stressful for a lot of people out there because they're hoping and wishing and believing that this is going to be like the saving position for and not really ready to deal with the volatility that comes from it. So they want the reward, but they don't want to take on any of the risk. And the risk part of it is that you might have to end up waiting for a while in order to get your money back out of it, or to, find yourself in that position that, was the appropriate position again. And that right there is just like so screwed up for a lot of people to try and internalize and handle. So they don't want to feel that, and then they end up moving into bonds, or maybe even in the stock market where they feel a lot safer, and then they don't see these major returns, and then because they don't see those returns like they other people did in crypto, they just say, oh, crypto's no good, you don't want to be in that stuff, it's too, it's going to go to zero again, and it feels like justifying their own positions or something. All right. Good morning from Tillamook. Well, good morning. Up here on the West Coast with us. All right, everyone, ISP can throttle their internet. Governments are able to turn off all internet. How can one say it's just code? All right. See, and that's the fearful position that I think a lot of times will prevent people from actually, like, right here, what are you going to do when the government turns off the internet? And I'm like, well, my bank account's attached to the internet too. Right? Like like a bunch of my livelihood is attached to the internet. Like even at work, I use the internet. Like if they shut down the internet, I'm not worried about crypto. I'm worried about a hell of a lot more than just that. And so it's just like there's all kinds of things that you can say about it. Oh, they can make gold illegal again. I mean, that was a real thing. It was illegal to possess gold, right? Isn't that great? Like that's something that the government actually did. And so when I think about even that, it was just like people are like, well, the government, confiscated gold and they took all the gold from you. And I'm thinking, yeah, that was when we were on a gold standard, right? Those who want to go back to a gold standard are almost wishing for a gold confiscation. How else is the government going to do it unless they take all the gold from you? Kind of like a crypto or Bitcoin standard. They would have to confiscate all the Bitcoin from you as well. I don't think that's going to be the case. I just simply don't. And then, to try and explain the story about how I lost all my Bitcoin in unfortunate boating accidents is going to be very difficult, considering that's how everybody else lost theirs too. Nobody's going to believe me, I mean, I guess if I was the first one to tell the story, people would believe me. But after, millions of people are coming out talking about how they lost all their Bitcoin in an unfortunate boating accident, I'm not going to be able to get away with it. I mean, since I already lost all my silver in that unfortunate boating accident a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if they're going to believe me when I tell them that I did the same thing with the Bitcoin. I mean, it's just like... they didn't take it. Folks went down and turned it in. Yeah. And then said, you can't use it for any kind of real purpose, like in commerce. You can't use it to go buy a house. You can't use it for your collateral. You can't use it for all that other stuff. You have to keep it secret. All right? Until someday when it's not illegal anymore. It was voluntary, yeah, but you couldn't use it for anything. I mean, I guess you could use it for private trade if you could get anybody to trade it with. Right? But you couldn't just freely use it the way you'd want to. You had to be secretive about it. Yeah, I don't know. That's why it's like, to me, it's important to be in everything. Like, wait, you lost your silver? Yeah, Cody. It was like, sometimes you just don't feel comfortable with it being too far away from you. And, we got a huge river and took this kind of swell from the side, and just kind of everything went flying. And I mean, it was so close. I mean, it was right there at the edge of the boat, right over and gone. Did you get tired of people living in fear of government or the economy? Did you get tired of the greatest conspiracy is everything is going to be fine? Everything is going to be fine. Huh. If everything was going to be fine, I don't think anybody would ever try. Right? Like if everything was going to be fine, I wouldn't I wouldn't invest. I wouldn't I wouldn't like think of ideas for, trying to get into other places of flow. I wouldn't be cutting back on expenses. I wouldn't be doing any of that stuff. I wouldn't even worry about trying to show up to work or anything like that because everything would have been fine. Right? I mean, there wouldn't have been any of that stuff. I think that is far from what it is that people are feeling out there. Right? I don't think anybody feels that it's fine. I don't think anybody's trying to be convinced that it's fine. Most people know that it's far from fine. Now, some people have figured out a way to deal with the situation so it at least gives the appearance that they are not stressed. And for other people, they think that those people find it fine, right? Because it's always about somebody else's interpretation of it. But even those people, I don't think they find it to be fine because they're doing effort to try and maintain and keep and acquire and grow. So therefore, they must not feel that it's fine either, or else they wouldn't be doing any of that. So no, I don't think anybody thinks it's fine. I don't think anybody's convinced that it's fine, right? Or else they wouldn't be doing anything because it would be fine, right? It'd be fine not doing it. Cody, me personally, if that happened to me, I would be sending out dive teams and marine recovery experts. Yeah, my brother has scuba equipment. Maybe he can get down there and find that stuff. All right, I've been planting perennial food production since 2009, stacking the whole time. I sleep like a baby. All right, we all went and tried to find it. All right. I fear very little. I'm prepared for almost everything. Therefore, you must be fearing everything if you're prepared for it. Right? People who don't live in fear don't prepare. You're prepared for everything. That means you're in fear of everything, right? You say you're not in fear because you've done secured yourself, which is actually the ultimate of fear. Huh? I've got myself covered in every way. Go ahead, hit me with every. I don't think there's anything out there that can get me. That's a lot of fear. That's a lot of fear. People who don't live in fear is just like, dude, don't drive that fast. I was like, I'm fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. They're the ones who don't live in fear. The ones who don't prepare. The ones who don't care. UE, you literally passed up both of my comments. Oh, I'm sorry. Why just mine? I don't know. Where is it? Let me see. I just kind of cruised through. Where is it? How far away are you? Dude, how far back is it? Hold on. Dude, I didn't literally pass it up, man. It's just that far back. There's hundreds of comments. I can't read all of them. All right, oh, there it is. Okay, what's concerning is some unknown person owns the majority of Bitcoin. Oh, yeah, but I mean, that's not that concerning. That's typical. Like, I mean, how many people own dollars? Like 1% of the wealth is, what was it? I don't even know. It was like 99% of the wealth is owned by 1% of the people or something like that. That's already like all that has always been the case. That's the way it is. Like that's not nothing new. Right? I mean, I understand that's concerning, but it's concerning now with the dollar. It's concerning now with assets. It's concerning now with even just about anything out there. There's a concentration of it all happening. We, the people, are, we just scrape with the little bits and pieces, for the most part. So don't get mad at me, man. There's lots of comments. All right. If you can carry a firearm, does that mean you live in fear? If you carry a firearm, does that mean you live in fear? I'm not saying you live in fear, right? I mean, does even owning a firearm mean that you live in fear? I'm not saying that, that you live in fear, but the ultimate concern about carrying a firearm must mean that you are living in some sort of idea that there is going to be some sort of threat that is going to come to you, and that you have to have this thing on you because it's better to have it and not need it, right? Now, for me personally, I like it when I see people carrying. For one thing, I like when I see that, I have less fear. I think to myself, man, not that I ever had it before because I didn't live in fear, but now I have even less of an idea of fear. Like, I feel more security when I see somebody with a firearm. Yeah. Seriously, like when I see somebody carrying a sidearm, something like that, and they're just being totally cool, like that to me gives me a heightened level of security, a feeling of security. Not most people live in fear. Like they see that and then they get scared. I don't. I feel the exact opposite of that. Like when I see somebody who's appropriately carrying, acting in a manner in which that they are very cool and mentally competent, all that other stuff, like that to me, yeah, elevated sense of security. But I don't feel more secure by carrying a firearm. Like I literally don't. Like if I'm in the woods, I would, but I don't feel more secure because I don't live in an area in which that I would feel that I have threat. Like I live in Astoria. It's like one of the most chill places in the entire world, right? Like the mean streets of Astoria doesn't constitute the need to carry a firearm. It just doesn't, you know? Maybe somewhere, sometime there was a need for it that somebody could explain that, but not necessarily here. Anywhere else, yeah, maybe there might be a spot. So when I see people carrying a firearm in Astoria, I think to myself, what are you worried about, man? Like, I mean, what could possibly be happening here that would have you now carrying this firearm? Besides, the Astoria City Ordinance 5.010 says that you can't even carry the firearm loaded, so you're breaking the law on top of it all, right? Why don't you just carry it concealed and you don't have to worry about that anymore? And nobody has to see it, and nobody has to worry about it, and you get to, feel for no fear or fear or whatever it is that you're feeling. It doesn't matter. Right? So to me, like when I think about firearms, I don't think about it in a way that a lot of other people do. I don't think about it as a fearful thing that is happening. It's not there for some people it might be there for protection, but for me, I never really thought about firearms as a weapon for protection. And to me, a firearm was for duck hunting. It was for going out target practicing. It was for other things. It wasn't like I never thought about violence with a firearm. I didn't grow up that way, and which is weird because I grew up in the military too. Right? My dad was military my entire life. Yeah, I just don't see it the same way. So yeah, I guess if you are carrying it, yeah, you're living in fear. I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, I'm not scared to go into the woods, and not always do I go into the woods. Do I carry a firearm? Sometimes I have. For whatever reason, I chose to do it the times that I did, and the times that I didn't, I couldn't tell you. You know, but some days I chose to do it, and other days I didn't. I think mainly I would carry firearms if I had other people, around. And I guess that was probably because if something came in to attack somebody else, like how is it that you could save them if you can't, deal with that? And I guess really, like I would be more concerned about other people than I would be about myself. Like when I'm in the woods, I'm really aware of the situation. We don't have a lot of bears and cougars and stuff like that in our area. So it's not like, I mean, I would be more concerned about, coming across a pissed off elk or something like that who wants to trample you. That would be more my concern than say coming across a bear or a cougar or something of that nature. And so really carrying a firearm would be more for a noisemaker than anything else. Uh, do you need a concealed weapons permit? And that's like a whole thing. Don't you need a concealed weapons permit? And that's like a whole thing. You don't need a concealed weapons permit to carry a firearm. The Constitution of the United States says that every person has the right, legal. The Constitution says that you have the right to bear arms, right? To own and possess and bear arms. There is never, ever, ever any circumstance in which that any state, any municipality, any local government, anything can ever tell you or deny you the fact that you can do that. Now, there are city ordinances, there are laws, and there are things that say you can't carry or pack around a loaded firearm. And in that sense, yes, there are definite rules and regulations and all kinds of stuff. And if you get into some areas, they will really enforce that pretty heavily on you too. Getting a concealed weapons permit allows you to carry a firearm for the most part, except for certain locations. And it's generally for that state. Other states may accept it. Right? Now, to me, the idea of a concealed weapons permit is really a denying of your constitutional rights. And now, again, it comes down to the meaning that you've given it. And I certainly do not want to offend anybody who's gone out there and gotten a concealed weapons permit. That's not my intent by saying this. It's just my own personal belief in what it is that I have learned from Constitution and from by asking permission. Now, think about it itself. Concealed weapons permit. Permission slip. You're asking for permission, meaning you don't have a right. So you don't ask for permission to things you already have a right to do. If you have a right to do it, I'm not asking for permission. It's more of an FYI. I'm doing this, right? Because there's no permission to be asked. If I do ask for permission and say, please, can I do this? And I sign this permission slip, am I giving up my right by even asking for permission? Like, because you asked for permission, you sign this, got your permission slip, you are essentially saying, I don't have a right. And see, you can lose this right. You see, a lot of people say, oh, no, man, dude, you're just looking at it wrong. No, I'm not. Right? Because here in Oregon, I don't know about other states, and maybe things have changed since, but here in Oregon, if you get stopped by a police officer, you have to inform that police officer whether or not you're packing. All of a sudden, your right to remain silent has vanished. Even as it's simple as informing the police officer of whether or not you're carrying. See, when they pulled you over and they ran your license, they knew that you have a concealed weapons permit. They don't necessarily know that you have a firearm, but then now they're concerned about it. They have to be informed on whether or not you're carrying. Well, your right to remain silent doesn't exist if you have asked for permission because you have relinquished your right. You see where I'm getting at here? See, asking for permission is now, you are essentially giving up your right, and you can prove that to yourself by being stopped by the cops and then not answering their question about whether or not you're carrying a firearm. Because now you're breaking the law. How is that possible when you have a right to remain silent? Not if you have given up your right by signing a permission slip. You see the difference inside of this? This is why it's important to understand your rights as opposed to privileges, rights as opposed to permits. And now, don't get me wrong, I know plenty of people who've gotten their concealed weapons permit, and I'm glad they did, and I am much happier with people carrying their weapons around concealed or even open carry. I don't care. I'm much happier with people carrying firearms than not carrying firearms because I feel much safer with it. Right? And that's me personally because I grew up around them and I don't live in fear of these things. Now, if I had other experiences in my life, if I grew up in a bad neighborhood, if all that other, it would be a much different attitude about these things, right? But this is the way that I grew up, and this is my belief system, and how it is that I came across it was from understanding the Constitution and then asking for that permission. I this came to the understanding that, man, I think you relinquish your rights when you do that. And the cop kind of proves that when you have to reply to them whether or not you're packing. Yeah. My right to remain silent is no longer there. That's not good. That is not a good thing. All right. UE is on the money. Oh, thank you. Agree 100%. Damn true. Still awake or just awake? No, I did sleep for a bit last night. We just been up for a while. But it is very cold, and we've been going for a couple of hours, and my phone just told me that we only have about 10 minutes or I mean, 10% power left on the battery here. So never ask for permission. That's why I love rural Appalachia. If I can say that right. We permit nothing unless it benefits us. Yeah. Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont are constitutional carry states. Second Amendment trumps your feelings here. Yeah, Oregon's like you can open carry. You can open carry anywhere. There's nowhere that you can't open carry. Now, inside of that Astoria city limits, if you are open carrying, it can't be a loaded firearm. And that's one law that they can make. Like they can't deny you the ability to carry a firearm. That would be unconstitutional and therefore illegal. You can't make a law that denies the Constitution. They just can't do that. It's just not possible. But they can make a law that says, you can carry your firearm, it just can't be loaded. And then even in that, City Ordinance 5.010 clearly says that the law enforcement officer can then inspect that firearm to make sure that it's unloaded or not loaded. In that case, that's the only thing that they can do, right? You don't have to, like, they probably try to identify you, but you don't have to identify yourself, right? You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to tell them anything about what you're doing or where you're going or anything like that. You have every right in the world to carry it. You can carry it every single day, right? But they do have a legal authority inside of the city limits to inspect the firearm to make sure that it's not loaded. Once they have determined that it's not loaded, it's no longer a constitutional stop, right? I mean, or a consensual stop, right? You have to, you can say, hey man, I'm done, right? You've inspected it, I'm on my way, and get your firearm back and go. But, again, like why anybody would want to do that is beyond me. I mean, because you have to be able to legally transport your firearm from one location to another. Right? I mean, that's just all there is to it. And like, just because, most people would say, well, why don't you put it in a car? And if you don't have a car, right? I mean, foot traffic is by far the most common form of transportation in the entire world. So carrying a firearm on the street makes total reasonable sense for any American in the entire, confines of this constitutional republic that we live in order to carry a firearm. How you do that, the legalities in which the way that you do it, that may be different from one location to another. You come out here outside of city limits, you can carry as many guns as you want, as loaded as you want them. Alrighty, guys, I'm gonna give it like another, I don't know, just 5 minutes or so, and then we're gonna call it quits for the morning. Maybe we'll come back out this afternoon. I might do Patreon. For those of you who are following me on Patreon, I'm going to review another speech here probably later this afternoon, going over some of the old speeches that we had done to develop the credible threat theory. We're going to go over some of those old speeches with updated understanding of our current situation and then reviewing those speeches again. We did the Ben Bernanke speech, deflation, making sure it doesn't happen here. It was awesome. Felix had joined in on that. It was really cool because it was just like the two of us having a conversation about it. So if you guys are interested in that, be sure and follow the links down to the Patreon channel. Go and join Patreon. We'll, do a live stream, set that up for maybe, like I said, later on this afternoon or something. And it should be for a great conversation. And when we have just a handful of people up in these live streams, like today is pretty cool because we have 100 people or so watching, and this one's pretty good. But when we get it down to like 30 people or less, the conversation really gets refined into like really stays very focused and narrowed onto the subject, and it makes for some really good understanding and educational videos. So be sure and join the Patreon for that video that we're going to be doing here real soon. Thank you guys for being here. You guys are awesome. Always awesome. Why is decreasing prices bad? Deflation, isn't that the opposite of inflation? Yeah, you should go and you should really read the speech, Deflation, Making Sure It Doesn't Happen Here, right? It's by Ben Bernanke. In fact, I have it up right now. And in that, it really starts to describe the problems that are faced. Let me see if I can kind of get into it. A deflation in general is the result of a low and falling aggregate demand. The basic prescription for preventing deflation is therefore straightforward, at least in principle. Use monetary and fiscal policy as needed to support aggregate spending in a manner as nearly consistent as possible with full utilization of economic resources and low and stable inflation. In other words, the best way to get out of trouble is to not get in the first place. Beyond this common sense injunction, however, there are several measures that the Fed or any central bank can take to reduce the risk of inflation. Hold on here. Where's risk of deflation? Sorry. Where is it? Because. Oh, here we go. Beyond its adverse effects in financial markets on borrowers, zero bound on nominal interest rates raises another concern, the limitation that it places on conventional monetary policy. Sorry, guys, there's a spot in here that really describes it well, and I just can't remember where it's at. Deflation great enough to bring down the nominal interest rates close to zero poses special problems for the economy and for policy. First, when the nominal interest rates has been reduced to zero, the real interest rate paid by borrowers equals the expected rate of deflation, however large that may be. To take what might seem like an extreme example, though in fact occurred in the United States in the 1930s, suppose that deflation is proceeding at a clip of 10% per year. Then someone who borrows for a year at a nominal interest rate of zero actually faces a 10% real cost of funds. So now they have to come up with ever increasing amounts of dollars that have bigger purchasing power to pay back that debt, as the loan must be repaid in dollars whose purchasing power is 10% greater than that of the dollars borrowed originally. In a period of sufficiently severe deflation, the real cost of borrowing becomes prohibitive. Capital investment, purchases of new homes, and other types of spending declined accordingly, worsening the economic downturn. Although deflation at the zero bound on nominal interest rates creates significant problem for those seeking to borrow, they impose an even greater burden on households and firms that have accumulated substantial debt before the onset of deflation. This burden arises because even if debtors are able to refinance their existing obligations at lower nominal interest rates, with prices falling, they must still repay the principal in dollars of increasing, perhaps rapidly increasing real value. When Williams Jennings Bryan made his famous, quote, cross of gold speech in 1896 presidential campaign, he was speaking on behalf of heavily mortgaged farmers. So this is back in 1896, even before the Great Finance, or even before the central banking system, right? Heavily mortgaged farmers whose debt burdens were growing ever larger in real terms, the result of a sustained deflation that followed the America's post-Civil War return to the gold standard. The financial distress of debtors can, in turn, increase the fragility of the nation's financial system. For example, by leading to a rapid increase in the share of bank loans that are delinquent or in default. Japan in recent years has certainly faced the problem of, quote, debt deflation and the deflation induced ever increasing real value of debts. Closer to home, massive financial problems, including defaults, bankruptcies, and bank failures, were endemic in the America's worst encounter with deflation in the years of 1930 to 1933, a period in which, as I mentioned, the U.S. price level fell about 10% per year. So when you find deflationary scenarios, what you are really finding is that the economic activity is slowing down, defaults are rising, you are finding businesses closing down, the unemployment is rising, the ability to acquire anything in your life in order to sustain yourself becomes incredibly difficult and hard to find. That is what happens during a deflationary scenario. Everybody just thinks, oh, prices go down, and yet all the commerce is still taking place. No, absolutely not. There is no commerce taking place, and that's the reason why the prices are coming down. People are suffering the consequences, and they're starving, and they're hungry, and they're begging for something to happen. And generally, what they're begging for is more an inflationary pressure coming from the government's attempt to do something about reinflating it, you know. If you are a saver with tons of like self-sustaining commodities, food, energy, and everything else, then a deflationary scenario will probably work out awesome for you. You know, you get all this stuff goes on sale. All right. Why don't you have your 100K plaque pasted on your headliner? I don't know. Do you want to see a picture of it? I mean, I can go get it if you want. All right. If you're not in huge if you're not in huge debt, it doesn't matter. No, it does matter, because even if you're not in huge debt, when the deflationary pressures come, is that most likely you're still going to want to count on somebody else taking out debt in order for you to have a business. Like, you need somebody else to borrow money so that they can come down and spend it with you. If they're not borrowing money, then they're not spending it with you. You're more likely not going to be spending it with anybody either, right? Because you need to earn money in order to spend the money. And in a deflationary scenario, what you are finding is less and less economic activity and less people transferring money to each other. And are you finding that depressionary effects that come from it? That's what's really going to happen from it. Good spot for people who are prepared for it. Don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, it might be really awesome for some people, but other people are going to suffer major from it. And the people who are going to suffer major from it are the majority of the people, because they don't position themselves for a deflationary scenario. They only position themselves for more inflationary. All right, guys, my phone's going to go dark here in just a minute. Thank you very much for being here. And then consider joining the Patreon channel and coming back where we start to review these speeches. Like I said, we did Ben Bernanke's speech the other day, and it was killer. Did a great, it was a great review. Having the understanding of where we are today, and then going back and reviewing those things that they were talking about, the problems that they were facing, the concerns and the ideas that they were going to use to try and fix it. Going back and reviewing that information is going to give us a much better understanding of what ended up happening, how it is that that occurred, what it is that they are planning to do and going into the future. So again, best way to do it is to read through some of these speeches, and, joining us with this conversation is going to give you the best ability to internalize that for yourself. All right, uneducated economist, you guys let me know.